What's going on, beautiful people? And welcome back to another comic book review video. I'm your majestic sayer over at SuperCliff, and if you guys are new to this channel, then do me a solid by smashing that like and subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss out on an upload, and so that you'll always be kept up to date with your favorite top tier comics happening in the comic book world. And today, folks, we are continuing the Beyond era with everyone's favorite friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, with the Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 79 and issue number 80. Oh yeah, freaky. Indeed, folks, we are doubling up today. Both of these comics are written by Cody Ziglar, with the art by Michael Dowling. And guys, if you haven't been keeping up with this comic, then definitely check out the playlist within this video's description. It will help catch everyone up on what's been happening. Now check it. The aftershocks of the Morbius incident are still fresh in Ben Reilly's mind, and now he is faced with Kraven the Hunter, and our nefarious hunter is going to test his prey like never before. Thus, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. Alrighty folks, so our story picks up with a little glimpse into the lives of the everyday working person of the Beyond Corporation, and by and large, they all seem pretty happy. Like, there's definitely a nice sense of community within this job, and we see a bunch of the people who work at Beyond are out drinking with fellow workers, and heck, we even see Marcus supervising but also enjoying himself at the bar. Now, as the night begins to close, one of the workers, a guy named Doug, basic name 101, takes off and walks down an alley all by himself. However, he is met by something frightful, something that's powerful enough to sober him up, because our boy Doug ends up getting jumped in the alley by an unseen force. Ooh. Now, normally, this wouldn't be a big deal, but Doug's job the next day was supposed to oversee Ben Reilly's suit firmware update. And yes, that's right. Ben's Spider-Man suit is so high-tech that it needs firmware updates. Now, all of this extra time in the corporate world is no good for Ben, and he continues to butt heads with all of the higher-ups. But as Marcus reiterates why Beyond aims to support him, Ben takes offense to his dialogue, as it sounds greedy. And so Ben reminds Marcus that his reason of being bullheaded was why they hired him in the first place, not simply to make Beyond look good, but to help people. Because Ben thinks that it's important for Spider-Man to not just battle supervillains like Morbius and the UFOs, but also to be out there on the street, stopping petty crime and showing the people of New York that he's there to help. And so while everyone waits for the firmware update to finish, Ben decides to go out and get some air. But he also goes on a personal errand. And with 30 minutes before patrol, and having altered his suit's firmware with the do not disturb mode from the night before, Ben heads over to Peter's hospital room without Beyond being able to track him. Now, once the two Spider-Men are alone together, Ben begins to open up. And while he's looking forward for Peter's return, he's also scared about his role as Spider-Man, because Ben has been asking this question, wondering who is Spider-Man. But now he's been pondering the concept of what is Spider-Man, basically questioning whether or not Beyond truly has the interests of the people. Suddenly, the hospital TV reports about an armed robbery. Ben wishes Peter well and masks up, informing Mary Jane that duty calls. And so with that, he swings off into action. Now, while en route, an irritated Marcus is finally able to reach Ben through the comms, reminding our hero to respect the process that Beyond has with him. Now, later on at the scene, as Spider-Man takes out the crooks, while also saving a little girl from getting smashed by a runaway truck, this is the point where Ben and Marcus actually kind of end up understanding each other. For Marcus, he really does understand where Ben is coming from, and he knows he just wants to help people. And so he vows that he'll try and make street crime more regular on Beyond's algorithm, which tells Spider-Man, what to do in the city. But of course, it's not all about stopping bank robbers and saving children. It is still beholden to its shareholders. And so with that, Marcus directs Ben to the home of a Beyond board member, a man by the name of Andrew Ayers, who's currently in lockdown. Upon arriving, Ben hears Andrew's voice, which leads him to the master bedroom, but he ends up finding the man's dead body and is suddenly hit by an explosion. Heavily dazed, Ben finds out that his attacker is Kraven, who overwhelms our hero, while narrating that he's on a hunt of cleansing. Now Ben slowly recovers, and so afterwards, he immediately leaps out of the window to escape. However, he is caught in a prepared trap of hallucinogenic darts. He begins to lose his sense of reality. And while that's happening, Kraven appears in a nightmarish form, telling Ben to rejoice, as his great awakening is about to begin. Now, continuing on with Amazing Spider-Man issue number 80, we continue with Ben Reilly losing his shit, his sense of reality, upon getting hit with one of Kraven's darts. Now, with his hallucination and spider sense in overdrive, Ben sees the monstrous vision of Kraven, who tells him to rejoice, as the Great Awakening has finally begun, and he urges Ben to look into the abyss. And though Ben is trying his hardest to escape, he merely is left to see the visions, the faceless defining moments of Peter's life, while seeing himself as nothing more than an empty shell. Now, during this session of Freaking the Freak Out, Kraven states that he brought this on Spider-Man as a way of hoping he would have an epiphany, and that he could free him from beyond, so that he can revert to his truest form and make the hunt for Kraven fun again. Now, at the same time, Ben's consciousness falters and he falls to the ground in a closed alleyway, where Kraven greets him and promises to make him whole again as the hunt begins anew. Thus, Kraven's face in the vision slowly shifts to the likeliness of Janine as Ben begins to lose consciousness. Back at Beyond, Marcus is yelling for reconnection with Ben, frantic to know his location, demanding the staff that the fact that Ben is missing is terrible. So let's try and stall this for as long as we can from Maxine. Now afterwards, Marcus is called by an angry Janine, demanding answers after Beyond employees started to race out of her home on a code blue alert. And so she threatens Marcus with the fact that she's been in a prison. Janine promises Marcus violence, threatening to dropkick him in the chest if he doesn't tell her where the hell Ben Reilly is. But Marcus assures her that the situation is being handled by Beyond's brightest minds, therefore she shouldn't worry. Now, over in the lab, Marcus's team is still in the dark, and once again, Marcus picks up his phone to answer the call, thinking that it's Janine again, but Marcus is scared to find out that it's actually Maxine, his boss, calling for an update, and he timidly begins to answer. Elsewhere, Ben begins to wake up, and is still very much out of it. Eventually, he finds out that he was bandaged up by fellow prisoners, Doug, the Beyond worker, and a few others. They explain how they're in one of Beyond's algae farms, and from there, Doug gives him an experimental cure of all pharmaceuticals from Beyond, as a means of helping Ben back to reality. Ben then goes off to face Kraven, and angry by his service to Beyond, Kraven feels that Spider-Man's weakness now reflects poorly on him. But luckily, just as they're about to face off, the pills start to kick in, to which Ben is cogent again. And from there, the two fight, which results in Kraven getting thrown into a vat of algae. But before he does, Kraven triggers another explosion. Now, because of this explosion, this gives Kraven enough time to seemingly escape or sort of fake his own death, while Ben has to deal with the explosion and aftermath and help out the prisoners. Back in Manhattan, Janine rage calls Marcus, to no avail, but is suddenly greeted by a returned Ben. Marcus shows up shortly after with doctors to remove his suit and to give him medical attention along with updates. Afterwards, Marcus leaves to make a call as the doctor stays behind with Ben in the sickbay, where Ben accidentally mentions the pills Doug had given him. Elsewhere, Marcus calls up Maxine to update her on Ben's condition, stating to her that the damage is mostly superficial and recommends that he has the week off. And while Maxine wants more of a disciplinary response, she recognizes that such emotion would be too dramatic of a reaction, and so instead she goes with Marcus's idea. After she hangs up, she apologizes for the interruption and resumes conversing with Beyond's lawyers, with their understanding that they provide her a cease and desist order for the Brooklyn Spider-Man. Meanwhile, across town, we pick up with Aunt May, heading off somewhere while calling Peter's doctor, stating to him that she does not understand why Peter isn't getting any better. Now, Dr. Burdick questions how Aunt May was able to get a hold of his number, and Aunt May lets him know that she keeps track of a teenage boy in the middle of Queens. And so if May Parker needs to find something, you best believe that she's going to find it, which is why she needs Dr. Burdick to find the answers on his end. Now, Dr. Burdick lets her know that her nephew has a very specific illness brought on by a very specific set of circumstances that they don't technically understand because not enough data is within their possession. And so they're basically just flying blind at the moment. And Aunt May lets him know that if additional data is what he needs, then he better get ready because he's about to get a fuck ton of data. Now, after Aunt May hangs up the phone, she tells herself that there's no turning back as she meets up with an old flame of hers, Dr. Otto Octavius. And Aunt May, she's extremely direct with him because she needs his brain, and Doc Ock agrees to help. But before he does that, he needs to grab his work suit, his tentacles. And that, folks, was both The Amazing Spider-Man issue numbers 79 and 80. And it's without a doubt that both Ziglar's writing and Dowling's art continue with the main story very, very well. There's a key check-in with Peter, who is still in a coma, as well as a few more shades of gray that are applied to the Beyond Corporation. And you know, it's clear as day that the Beyond Corporation is a company with interest that sees Spider-Man as an asset. But Ziglar uses one of Beyond's top dogs, Marcus, to show us that the company and its people aren't straight up comic book evil. Rather, they're evil in the corporate sense. So I guess you can say that, you know, they're evil in the everyday, real life sense. Man, that's pretty depressing. Anyways, now with issue 79, the story does a neat job with showing us the brotherly relationship that Ben has with Peter, despite the fact that, you know, he's a clone. I very much like this scene since it's adding character to Ben. You know, Ben wants to be the best. He wants to prove that he can be a Spider-Man. And to see him break down was somewhat touching. You can definitely kind of feel the pain that he's in as you read it. Now, when the book gets to the Kraven part, it feels very much like a traditional Kraven story where he's hunting down Spider-Man, but in this case, it's Ben Reilly. The look of Kraven is illustrated well by the art team, and the action is less bombastic and is focused more so on the personal blows and banter between the two characters. But the battle is far from over, as Kraven's newest hunt has a different purpose to it, as he basically drugs Ben times 3000, and dude is just tripping out non-stop throughout the end of issue 79 throughout issue 80. But at its core, essentially this whole segment is exploring Ben's psychological state as a copy of Peter rather than being his own person. And it's done so in a way that doesn't make it feel so, hey, look at this. Do you understand it now? It's right in your face. Can you read it? So that's cool. Another thing issue 80 does very well is help define the complicated relationship in the Beyond Corporation, especially between Marcus and Maxine. Marcus made it very clear in the last issue that Beyond Corp's interests are more complicated than just saving the day, but he's got a bit more heart and care for Ben than Maxine does. Ziglar furthers the development of both of these characters through a key conversation, and thrown into the mix is Ben's lover Janine, who won't stand by and just let these people treat Ben like a crime-fighting robot. Now, outside the character work, and like, you know, there aren't enough answers about Kraven. Rather, there's more of a question mark wrap-up to this villain. But clearly the main Spider-Man Beyond story is holding its cards close to vest for future potential story threads featuring Kraven. Basically, I would anticipate that we will see more of Kraven once Sony gets that Kraven the Hunter movie up and going. And that's so fucking stupid. I hate Sony, but I digress. All in all, Cody Ziglar and Michael Dowling crushed their two-part story by furthering developing the interesting character dynamics at work. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 79 and 80 offer some trippy art and a battle that shows Ben is worthy, particularly when he's not drugged. The Beyond era of Spider-Man is grand, thanks to a good mix of character drama, dynamic action, and a hero who suffers from imposter syndrome. Both the Amazing Spider-Man issues 79 and 80 get an 8 out of 10. And guys, if you like this video, make sure to hit that like button in order to show your support to the channel. And tell me, what are your thoughts and opinions on these issues? Are you guys excited for issue number 81? What do you guys think about Ben taking on Miles Morales? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. And until the next video, peace.